So it's a couple days after the Danger Ranger race. Got back, got everything unloaded, and been tinkering with the Ranger trying to figure out what was going on. And I think I found the problem, but I haven't test ran it yet. Gonna bring you guys along for that. So let me show you what I found. So I modified the intake. The airbox used to sit over here, and the actual inlet started over here, and this mass airflow was bolted to the backside of the airbox. Well, as you can see, I took that out, kind of just duct taped that on, tried to seal it off as best I could without getting a whole new tube and everything. And then I had an actual metal tube bolted to here and kind of snaked over without any hard bends, and came through and out the front where the headlight would be. So it was actually kind of like a ram air intake. On my first couple of hot laps, when it was acting wrong, they're acting weird, that's what I suspected. I should have done some testing with it, but I never did at high speeds just because I didn't really have a good legal place to test it. So brought it back to the pits, I ripped that out, and then left it just like this minus this plate, and attempted it like that, hoping that there would be enough air coming through to improve things, but not to actually force it in and overload and get too much air. Well, that didn't work either, so brought it back in for the second time, and that's when I decided to put this plate over it, because as you can see looking in here, the actual sensor part is offset. So I was thinking maybe that enough air was rushing past it, not actually reading right, and that's why it was running rough. So that didn't work either. This is actually a new mass airflow sensor we went and got after the third attempt at the hot laps without any success. Threw this on here, but unfortunately we couldn't have any testing. So what I think I found is at idle it'll start running rough, and I think it's because enough air is drawn past without going over the sensor. So if you block it off to about this much, it'll run right. You can rev it up and it'll act okay. But I think on a load it's not able to draw enough air through this little portion here. So I made this little flap door just to see. This isn't going to be any permanent fix. I'll end up getting another airbox set up and everything, because I think I trashed the original one, but we'll get it back right and figure out what we want to do with this. I've got two options that I can think of. One, he's supposedly doing the Danger Ranger race again next year, so I could just leave the truck like it is, minus fixing it and getting it to run right, and then I'll have a truck ready to go for next year's race. But as much work as I put into it, and through the unfortunate circumstances, I've got a pretty good looking truck that I could do something with. So I was actually thinking about making a drift truck out of it, finding a good 5.3 LS takeout and manual transmission, drop it in with a handbrake and maybe a custom angle kit. But honestly, it's got a pretty good turning radius anyway, so I think it'll be a pretty decent drift truck with just enough horsepower and manual transmission and a handbrake. So not really sure what I want to do there. I definitely want to be part of the Ranger race next year, but that would mean buying another Ranger, putting enough money into it, you know, a couple $100 for the cage and any type of maintenance I got to do to it. So not really sure there. Luckily I got about a year to think about it, but the drift truck would be some pretty good content for you guys, so I'm kind of leaning that way. So drop a comment and see what you think. What would you like to see? And I'll try and decide something. But right now we're gonna go take it for a test drive and see if my little fix here made a difference. go up the gravel road here first, just because a little less attention. Exhaust is noisy, but that was actually a good bit of throttle, and she acted all right. Still getting a little bit of coughing, but definitely got a lot more throttle. So I'm gonna write it off as it's my intake setup. So I'll be looking at getting another airbox setup and everything and putting it back to stock, just because that's the way it was made and that's how it's tuned for. So that's one bad thing about these new vehicles with computers and all that. If you don't have your air set up right, they don't run right. So we're going to take a little break from working on the Ranger and start getting this truck ready. We're thinking about racing next weekend, which is Halloween weekend, and they're having a big Halloween bash out at Wild Country Off-Road in Mississippi. So they posted having a pretty big payout, so we're going to go see if we can take advantage of that and get a good race in. So a couple things we got to do is obviously change oil, filter, and clean the fuel filter. I also, last time checking the valves, there were a couple of valves that were getting kind of tight, so we need to be sure those aren't getting any worse. Don't want to go possibly breaking a valve and causing all other kinds of damage. So just keeping an eye on those and being sure nothing major is going wrong before we go running the truck. So gonna set up a time lapse and show you guys a little bit of what we're doing. I also wanted to show you guys our new D&D Patty 16Ls. They're not cut and scooped yet, so we're not going to try and get them on before running Wild Country, but here's a little comparison on same size wheel next to a 14.9 BKT. They stand just a little bit shorter, but they actually measure exactly the same width, even though the 14.9 looks a little bit wider and the 16L is listed as wider. But if you look on the 16L, the lug kind of extends a little bit outside the actual tire itself, but on the 14.9 it's almost perfectly in line. So it's kind of an optical illusion, but they actually measure exactly the same width. So here are the wheels. My plan is to swap the 14.9s onto the D&Ds because the D&D wheels are a little bit heavier, and keep the 14.9 set up for burnout tires because we're going to be doing Cleetus and Cars in November. So we obviously don't want to go and smoke the new tires. These 14.9s are pretty old. They're definitely beat up. You can see how rounded off the lugs are and just old, worn out. We think that's the reason we didn't do so well in or as well as we could have in Indiana, just traction. So these new 16Ls, the lugs are a lot stiffer, and especially once you go getting them cut, they're a lot deeper. So we're going to put the 16Ls on the American Force wheels because they're lighter, just because we don't need any more weight, just another disadvantage. But going to test them out and see how we like them. got all the valves checked. One of them was tight with no adjustment left, but I don't think it's gotten any worse since the last time I checked them. So we're just going to keep an eye on it after the next run, be sure it's not getting any worse, and hope it doesn't break and cause any damage. That would suck, but not like we could get it. I don't think we could get a set of valves in time with the way parts are right now. So definitely not by next weekend, probably not even by November, but definitely probably pull the motor out and go through the whole thing this winter. So I got the block heater hooked up right now, heating the oil up to help it drain quicker because we run 60 weight, so it's real thick and it's about 60 degrees right now, so it'd take forever to drain, pretty much all night really. So hook the block heater up to quicken that up a little bit. In the meantime, the starter was dragging after the last event, so I'm gonna pull all the ground connections off, probably do the hot connections as well, all the water and everything that we run through, and all the washing. There's more than likely just a bunch of corrosion on the leads, so we're gonna do that. And if that doesn't fix it, then it might be the disconnect. We run a battery disconnect in the rear, and I've got a cable inside the cab that I can shut it on and off. That's a safety requirement for pretty much every race we go to. Also going to do a nut and bolt check once I start draining the oil, and after that fill it back up with fluids and do a little bit of washing maybe sometime this week. She'll be ready to go. No big pieces of metal on the drain plug, always a good sign. So I got the oil, it's actually slowing down already. That's a good thing about heating that oil up, it drains a lot quicker. But it's looking really good, really clean. Always hurts your feelings a little bit whenever you got to drain oil that looks so clean. But for one, it doesn't even get that dirty on methanol because it's a really clean fuel. But you got to do it on these high horsepower motors that you're running hard like this. And also when you run methanol, you get a lot of condensation and excess fuel in the oil, and it gets it milky. The oil can't do its job as well. We run the VR1 racing oil from Valvoline. I've had really good luck out of it. Actually broke a oil pump at one event, and I didn't notice it about halfway through. Did a turn and probably a 200-300 foot straight full throttle pull without realizing that I had zero oil pressure because the pump was broken in half, and obviously pulled the motor out and took it to the engine builder after that, and he said the bearings look completely fine. So big testament to the VR1 oil. Another reason we like it is the condensation and alcohol won't separate from the oil very quickly at all. It takes several months of sitting still. Other oils, they separate a lot quicker. So let's say you park the truck overnight after an event, go to load up the next morning. If it's separated, then all that fuel and water is sitting at the bottom where the pickup actually picks up. So when you first crank your motor, you're running, or you're oiling on fuel and water, which is not good at all for obvious reasons. So just two reasons we like the VR1. But on these high horsepower motors like this, you got to change your oil after every event. Gives you a little indication of how the motor's doing. Check and be sure you don't have any metal or anything like that, or brass from the bearings, and keep the alcohol and everything out of it. So finishing up, put some oil in it. Did a quick nut and bolt check just around the motor and everything, and everything was looking good. I'll probably hop under it tomorrow and check a bunch of the driveline bolts and stuff like that. Just a few odds and ends type stuff here, and clean it later this week, make it look nice and all nice and pretty. And yeah, next video you guys see will probably be a race video. So if you like this video, kind of seeing a little behind the scenes what goes into maintenance and stuff like that, this is real simple stuff. I'll definitely be sure to make videos whenever we go doing anything more exciting, like pulling a motor, pulling it out for refresh, and anything like that. I want to go through the shocks this winter. We went through the rears last year and we replaced springs, or beginning of this year, and they're doing a lot better, but I think the fronts are soft. If you watch some of the videos from Indy, the front's kind of hitting a little bit sooner, and so it's making the rear slap and then bottom and rebound real bad. So I'm going to add a little bit. I'm going to add 2 clicks for this weekend and see how it goes. And but the fronts haven't been gone through as far as changing oil and seals like that. They're not leaking, but if they're anything like the rear, the oil was nasty and way past due for a change. And we'll probably get some springs too, because those springs are pretty old, and that has a lot to do with it too. So if we go through those, get them dialed for next season, I feel like I can really push the truck a lot harder, and hopefully get to where we're kind of on top of the game. We're a pretty competitive truck right now, and as long as we can keep it together. So got to do a lot of preventative maintenance this season, and we'll be sure to keep you updated on all that. So if you like this video, give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more. Drop a comment on how you think this video went. Still learning a lot here, so any constructive criticism is really appreciated.